Now, I would say that every Phil Collins song is underrated, but today I've picked 10 songs that I think are really great, aren't often talked about, weren't often played live, and were never singles. Let's discuss. Okay, this is a video I've been wanting to make since I launched the channel, and I really do believe that Phil Collins as a whole is underrated, and maybe we'll get into the reasons why in another video another day. But today I want to talk about 10 songs. I want to highlight 10 songs that I think are so good, but weren't often played live and aren't songs that passive fans or radio fans would be aware of, but really deserve their day in the sun. So I have a couple rules before we get started. First of all, my rules for this list was they have to be album songs. They can't be B-sides. Also, they're Phil Collins songs. We're not doing any Genesis songs on this list. They can't have been released as a single. They're not an overly common live track. Now, some of these have been played live. I made the choice that none of them were allowed to be singles, and that turned out to be really hard. Here's some songs that got cut from this list, my original list, because I didn't realize that they were actually singles. One example was Thunder and Lightning. Thunder and Lightning was going to be on this list. It's probably I think is the most underrated song. I would have put it at the top of this list, and I'm not doing this list in order, but I love Thunder and Lightning. Such a great track, but I didn't realize it was the last single, like kind of a last-ditch single from Face Value. So that can't be included. Same with It Don't Matter to Me from Hello I Must Be Going was a single. The Same Moon, I didn't realize that was from Dance Into the Light, that was a single. In fact, The Same Moon and No Matter Who from Dance Into the Light, I was going to have on this list. I think those are really great tracks. They're deep in the album, and I think they're really good. But I didn't realize that they were released as singles. The Same Moon was released in Germany, I believe, only as a single. But No Matter Who was released as the third single just before Wear My Hat was a single. So couldn't include that. And then I was going to include Son of Man. I put that on my top 10 list because I think it's a brilliant track. And I do think it's underrated. I don't think it gets as much love as Strangers Like Me or You'll Be in My Heart or even the other tune. But I couldn't include that because that was also a single not in America though, but it was a single somewhere. Those ones had to be eliminated from my list, but I've got 10. We're going to go through them right now. And again, I think that there are so many Phil Collins songs that are underrated, but this to me is kind of like underrated amongst diehard fans and even underrated amongst Phil Collins himself because these weren't played live very often, and I really think they should have been. So I actually don't have this in like any sort of top 10 list. I think these are all equally underrated. So I don't have this in any sort of particular order. But what I did do just for fun is I put them in order of release date. So we're starting with the tracks from Face Value, and we're going to go all the way down to Testify. But these are not necessarily like numbers 10 through 1. So the first song on my list is from Face Value, and it's This Must Be Love, which is track 2 from Face Value. This is such a good Phil Collins song, and it's some of the Motown influences that I wish that he had kind of kept throughout the years, and he did a little bit, but it's very minimal, it's mid-tempo, and it's got a great melody. It reminds me of something that could have been on But Seriously. It's very groovy with lots of drum machines and just very tight bass. It's all about bass on this song, and so I mean, the bass riff, is kind of a hook, you know, a little bit. It's almost like part of the melody. So I love this song. I like hearing it all the time. Easily. I mean, here's what's funny about this underrated list, and this is true for a lot of diehard fans of any artist, but this list is actually some of my favorite songs. In fact, all of these songs I think would be my top 25 songs from Phil Collins. So it's kind of weird. It's like I'm saying these are underrated, and they're actually, I like these more than the overrated songs. I like This Must Be Love more than I like Easy Lover. Do you know what I mean? I would almost even say I like This Must Be Love more than In the Air Tonight. I just think it's a really groovy song, and its production is so beautiful, and it's a great melody. It's just overlooked and underappreciated. So the next track on my top 10 list, or just 10 in general, is You Know What I Mean. I know a lot of folks love this song. Now, how amazing was it when he brought it out on his most recent solo tour with his son playing piano? That was so special and so beautiful. And this is a really great track. I've always seen this as like a segue into Thunder and Lightning because it just kind of hangs in the air and then the drums start. So it always just felt like an intro to Thunder and Lightning. I don't know if that was intentional. I think it's in the same key, so that's why it kind of feels like it flows a bit. But I wish Phil had done more of these like little interlude pieces, like something really simple, and it's not over the top in the way he would be in No Jacket or in But Seriously. It actually could fit. It's like a piano, like an older version of something that would be on both sides. So Really, really love this track. You Know What I Mean. Number 3, the third track off of Face Value. And I think that Face Value is just jammed full of underrated songs. And I even have one in my honorable mentions and that I couldn't include in this list. And I also already mentioned that Thunder and Lightning was going to be on this list had it not been a single. But I mean, I think that I Missed Again is underrated too, because it wasn't as big of a single, and it kind of fell out of the live set as the years went on. So I mean, I think this whole album, it's so weird to say, but I think this whole album in a weird way is underrated. I just think there's so many deep cuts on here that gets overshadowed by In the Air Tonight. So my third song is I'm Not Moving, which is towards the end of the album. Very weird song for Phil, very upbeat, and oh man, just such a great track. And I remember, it wasn't the first time I heard it, but the first time I fully noticed it and what was going on in this song was, maybe only 10 or 11 years ago, and having heard this song my whole living life and just being like, wow, this is a really great track. How did I overlook this song? And I don't know what style this would be. Would this be like almost Beatles-esque or something, with that piano going? It's a little bit McCartney style. And I just think it's great. And again, it's another one of those sounds that he didn't fully explore again. We wouldn't really hear something like this ever again. And that's one of the shames about Face Value, is that we have all these eclectic styles and these diverse styles of music on Face Value, but then some of the stuff we don't hear ever again, like the Roof is Leaking sound. I mean, we did a little bit. I guess there are times where he goes a little bit banjo-y. There's songs like The Roof is Leaking or I'm Not Moving or You Know What I Mean, where we don't really go down this path ever again. So, yeah. Anyway, the next track on my list is Doesn't Anybody Stay Together Anymore. We've talked about this song so many times. I think it was in my top tracks. I can't remember now. I mean, I absolutely adore this song. I know it's a fan favorite. I know it is. I hear it from you guys all the time that this is a big fan favorite. He did play this live. Don't get me wrong. He brought it down a couple times, but seriously, and I think he did play it on the No Ticket Required. So it is a live cut. This would be probably one of the most popular songs on my list. But I still think it's underrated. I mean, I actually think, I know I just said this about Face Value, but I actually think that No Jacket Required has a lot of underrated songs too, because everything's overshadowed by Suicidio, One More Night, Don't Lose My Number, Take Me Home. But then you have, well, I'm not going to get into it because I have more on this list, but Doesn't Anybody Stay Together? Who Said I Would? Yeah, some of the kind of upbeat songs aren't massive singles or didn't get to be played live in the later years. But Doesn't Anybody Stay Together Anymore is such a really, really beautiful song. Really, really beautiful song. What a blatant lyric too. Like a great lyric, to talk about love and breakup songs. This would be a breakup song, but to ask it in this way and to frame it in this way, I think is really bold. Number 5 on my list, again, in no particular order, is Inside Out. And that's also from No Jacket Required. It was played on the But Serious tour, and it was done really well. I think it's one of the best penultimate songs that he's ever done. It's just this classic, almost to the ending song, and it really ushers in Take Me Home really well. So when I get to this song on the record, it's emotional because I know the record's coming to a close. But what a powerful song. And it's slightly different. It stands out like a sore thumb a little bit on No Jacket Required, but not in a bad way. Oh, I forgot about Long, Long Way to Go. I should have put that on this list. Oh, well. Anyway, honorable mention. But Inside Out does stand out, very similar to Long, Long Way to Go in the sense that it's different than the 80s pop stuff. This is a little rockier. It's almost a little bit like Easy Lover. It's a big anthem. Gosh, so good. And then it brings it right down for that bridge. Do, 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 do. Oh, love this song. So I got to put it on my list because it's, I don't know, you don't hear it on the radio very much, and it wasn't a single. It wasn't a single. Gosh, I got to tell you, this is fun to do. I've been doing some videos about some other topics, and it's fun just to come back and talk about Phil and talk about his amazing catalog. Okay, so we're moving up. Let's move away from No Jacket Required into some of the underrated cuts on But Seriously. And there are a lot, because a lot of those songs were singles, but some of them, it's a big album, so some of them were left off. And so I want to talk about All of My Life. I really love this song, and it's a family song. It's a song about his dad and wishing he had connected to his dad, and about his childhood, and really a really beautiful song. It goes a little gospel, and set him up. And the chorus is cool, but just the production on this and all of the different sounds we hear just kind of stretches across the eras for Phil Collins. And this song we didn't hear too much live. I'm sure it was played a few times on But Seriously. Was it on the DVD? Like, was it on the VHS from Serious Hits? That Live in Berlin? I think I have that on DVD. I used to have it on VHS. I wonder where that went to. No, I don't think it's on the DVD. But anyway, I think maybe it was played on that tour. But honestly, I don't think it was. I'm looking at some set lists here. I don't think it was. Anyway, All of My Life is a great tune. Absolutely love it. And I love But Seriously because the top half is good, the middle is good, and the back half is good. So when you get to the end, you get to All of My Life, you get to Father to Son. Now, there is this like little breakup with Saturday Night, Sunday Morning, and I've talked about that when I reviewed the album. There's a little bit of a breakup in that kind of feeling, but All of My Life and Father to Son and Find a Way to My Heart is so great. That leads me to my next song from But Seriously. It's just Find a Way to My Heart. Now, you know this is my favorite Phil Collins song. I listed my top 10 favorite Phil Collins songs, or what I think are the best Phil Collins songs, and I put this at number 2. Even though it's my number 1, I put this at number 2, and you can watch that video to understand why. But Find a Way to My Heart is underrated. I mean, it was played live. It was played live quite a lot. I believe it was played live at the Farewell Tour. I believe it was played live on Both Sides. Was it played live on Both Sides? It was occasionally played on Sirius, but it wasn't on Sirius Hits. It wasn't played that much on But Seriously. But they did like more of like an urban, like upbeat version of it with like a different rhythm. But I love the album version of the song. I'm not crazy about the live version, so I don't really consider that. I just don't love hearing that. It just was too like out there. It sounded like a cover version of Find a Way to My Heart. It wasn't a single, and again, it's not something we hear all the time. And I just think it's a really, really good song. Okay, so now we got to move on to Both Sides, and I'll tell you what. That entire album could be on this list. It really could. I just think that is such an underrated album. I put it on this morning because I knew I'd be filming this video, and I just wanted to remember how powerful that record is, how great that record is. And so I think there's any number of songs could be on this list from Both Sides. And that's why I've picked 2 as in one slot. So technically this list is 11. But I've picked 2 because I think Cant Turn Back the Years. It was never a single. Unbelievable. But it was really good, and it's played live occasionally, and it's a really, really beautiful song. I like it almost as much as Every Day. I know we've got a lot of Everyday fans out there, but Every Day was a single, so we can't touch that track. You might be wondering, what were the singles from Both Sides? Well, it was just Both Sides of the Story, obviously. Then Every Day was the second one, and then We Wait and We Wonder. It's this album, it gets me so emotional because how bold it was for Phil to go in this direction, all done by himself after having 2 of the big, and throw in We Can't Dance and throw in Invisible Touch, after having like a string of massive stadium anthem hits, and then to go in this direction was super bold, and I personally love it. I don't know what I would have thought of it at the time, because if you're coming off of But Seriously, it had been a couple years, and now you're excited to hear this, and I could see you being disappointed if this was super mellow. But today, gosh, this music of Both Sides, it sounds like I'm doing a review for Both Sides. We will do that one day, trust me. I absolutely adore that record. But Can't Turn Back the Years, and then I've tied it with We Fly So Close. Why? Because it's a brilliant song, and quite frankly, we could pick any song off of Both Sides and put it in here. I could also put Survivors in here. There's a lot of beautiful songs on here. But I picked We Fly So Close because I know a lot of our audience members are fans of it. When I was talking about this album at one point, a lot of you guys had messaged me and left comments about the song We Fly So Close, and I see it talked about a lot. So I'm including it on my list because I do think it's incredible. It really it gets up there and just reminds me of one of those like great Phil Collins songs, and things like Survivors, We Wait and We Wonder. I was thinking about Survivors today, and it's not on this list. It could very well be on this list. I was thinking about Survivors, and again, with just like the drum machines and not the big toms that Phil normally does, that song could have been bigger if it was done more on the way of Find a Way to My Heart. So I think there's some songs on here. Gosh, I love Both Sides, but and I'll try to talk about this when I do the review of Both Sides, but it'd be so interesting to hear this record had it been done in the same way as But Seriously, with horns, tons of real instruments, and big drums. It could have been more commercially successful. I think Phil knew that, but gosh. Okay, we got to move on. Okay, the song I picked from Dance into the Light is River So Wide. There's a lot of underrated songs from Dance into the Light. I think it's an album that's a little bit underrated. And I think there's some great singles. It's In Your Eyes is beautiful. Dance into the Light is a great track. Those two are probably my favorites from the album. Like I mentioned, I wanted to pick The Same Moon. I wanted to pick No Matter Who. I think both of those are really underrated, and I think they're great singles. They remind me of like Tell Me Why, same era. And they remind me a little bit of like what he would do with Brother Bear and Tarzan. And they all just kind of like sound like they're from the same era because they are. And so I really loved Dance Into the Light. And so I picked River So Wide because it's a great drumming song. I do believe he played it on the Dance Into the Light tour. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But, you know, it's Phil on the drums. And this song reminds me of like, I wonder if this was during the writing stage for Tarzan, because it feels like it could have been a Tarzan cast off, or it could have come from the same sessions. And I love that he's borrowing a little bit of Dance Into the Light on Tarzan and borrowing a little bit of Tarzan on Dance Into the Light. So River So Wide is on this list. Now, my final song is from Testify. And I told you I didn't put this in order. I put this in order of when it came out, but I didn't put this in like, what's the most underrated and what's the least underrated. Although I could have done that. I didn't. But this song, I believe, is the most underrated song. So I've saved it for the last, but only because it's on Testify. But I do think it's the most underrated. And that's the song Through My Eyes, spelt Thru, my eyes. But gosh, I know you're thinking, oh man, it's been a while since I listened to Testify. I don't think I made it all the way through that album. Pause this video right now or put it on a loop so I get extra views. And go and listen to that song, Through My Eyes. It's the second last track, the penultimate track on Testify. I think it should have been the last. Honestly, we could pare that album down a little bit and it would be a brilliant album. I think we could have left off the last track and have Through My Eyes as the final track. But this is a really beautiful song. What I love about it, the chorus is pretty good. The chorus is pretty good, but the verses are unreal. And then he kind of creates this outro out of the verse melody. And I believe there's a key change that happens for the ending. You got to listen to this song. If it's been a while since you've heard the song, you've got to listen to it, because Through My Eyes from Testify is a great, great album. I got to give you a couple honorable mentions. I mentioned before, Thunder and Lightning, It Don't Matter to Me, The Same Moon, No Matter Who, and Son of Man I couldn't include in this list, even though I think they're underrated. But I couldn't include them because they were singles. Even if they weren't successful singles, they were singles. But I have 3 honorable mentions I just couldn't fit on this list. Why Can't It Wait Till Morning from Hello, I Must Be Going. Really, really nice song. Super, super simple song. Great, great track. Behind the Lines, which is a Genesis song, but it's so cool. And it's a Phil Collins song as well. It's so cool the way that Phil did it on his album. And gosh, the record doesn't get much like peppier than that tune. And I wish he had done more. I mean, I guess in a way, It Don't Matter to Me. And I cannot believe it's true. Have that feel, but Behind the Lines is the best of like his horn songs. That's why I included it on my Motown mix when I was doing my ideal Phil Collins set list, because I think it's a really, really good song. So that's in my honorable mentions. And then Come With Me from Testify. It's got this nursery rhyme feel, and I think that turns off a lot of people, but it actually is one of my favorite Phil Collins songs. I have it on a playlist that is kind of like a chill. I have a playlist called Chill Collins. I don't know if you saw that before. I'll link to it below. But I have this playlist that opens up with this track because it's just groovy, man. It's just like super mellow and peaceful. And it is a nursery rhyme based on that kind of melody, but it's underrated. And it wasn't a single. I was surprised by that. I don't know if I feel like it could have done well on like adult contemporary radio, but maybe it would rub people the wrong way just because it does sound a little bit childish, but I think it's a great song. So those are my honorable mentions. Let's go back over my 10 and then I'll let you get back to your whatever you were doing today. This Must Be Love. You Know What I Mean. I'm Not Moving. Those 3 were from Face Value. Doesn't Anybody Stay Together Anymore and Inside Out from No Jacket Required. All of My Life and Find a Way to My Heart from But Seriously. Can't Turn Back the Years, tied with We Fly So Close, tied with every song on both sides. And then River So Wide from Dance Into the Light, and Through My Eyes from Testify. Here's my question for you. Phil Collins song do you think is underrated? What Phil Collins song did he not play live enough? And what Phil Collins song do you think should have been a single? I'd love to hear. Just leave a comment. I read them all and I reply to them all. Thanks for watching.